Hey YouTubers, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post an overdue video response to Joseph O'Donnell Music's last thread. He had about 15 or so questions, quite a few, so let me kind of jump right in and probably have to do some two parts, but we'll see how it goes. Question number one, top 5 bass players. I talked about them kind of getting overlooked, so let's make sure we give them some credit where credit is due. Number 1, I'm going with Geezer from Black Sabbath. I really like him not only for his style of play, how technical he is, but also I think when Tony Iommi, when he had that accident where he got his fingertips cut off, one of the things that he kind of did was he went more to that power chord style of play, which was awesome because that's what kind of created Black Sabbath's sound. But I also think with those power chords, Geezer did such a good job of kind of filling in the wall of sound behind that, and it's just something that I've always kind of really appreciated and really loved the sound of Sabbath because of that. So even if you listen to like War Pigs, for example, there's basically 2 or 3 chords that Tony is playing in the intro to that, and Geezer's kind of filling in all the sound behind it, and it's just he's an awesome bass player. Number 2, I'm going with Robert T. from, let's just say, the new Metallica. There's a lot of things I like about him. Not only is he just a great player, as far as what he can actually do, I really love his personality, kind of being a very seemingly shy, somewhat reserved guy off stage. But when you see him on stage, I've seen him in concert a couple of times, and he just turns into a monster when he gets that bass in his hands. I mean, the guy is just metal throughout his heart. And I also really like, if you ever seen the documentary Some Kind of Monster, which is kind of about the making of this album, they have this part in there where they show the auditions that they had for bass players. And there's a lot of good guys that came in there, some guys from Nine Inch Nails, from Jane's Addiction, on and on. And it was just so weird because you could see with some of the things that Metallica was doing with them, those guys were kind of struggling a little bit to keep up with Metallica, and you would swear that Robert was just like, had been in the band for 20 years. And I love that part in the movie where Lars asked him, they're in the studio, all geared up, ready to go, and Lars goes, "Do you know any Metallica stuff?" And he looks at him, he goes, "Well, I could try Battery." And anyone that knows that song and knows Metallica, you know that the last song you would probably pick to try to audition and impress Metallica on would be Battery. I mean, that song is just like, it's like a fury, and the fact that he chose that and knocked it out of the park, he instantly became one of my favorite bass players. So that's Robert T. Next, I'm going with Metallica again. Old Metallica, original Metallica, with Cliff Burton. And all I can say about that, he's the guy that played bass on Kill 'Em All. He's the guy that played bass on Ride the Lightning. He's the guy that played bass on Master of Puppets. And it's, if you know those albums and listen to them, that's kind of enough said, honestly. So then, I'm staying metal here. Steve Harris, Iron Maiden. I mean, that guy's kind of the glue of that band, did most of the writing, and, is a great bass player. So I definitely like him a lot. Last but not least, it's impossible to talk about bass players without getting Geddy Lee into the conversation. I mean, Rush, Geddy, bass guitar. And not even to mention what he did on keyboards or what he does vocally, but just to even imagine that he plays the bass the way he does while doing those other things, it's phenomenal. I mean, he definitely has to be one of the top bass players of all time. So that was question number 1. Question 2, do you collect anything other than records? Long time ago, I collected baseball cards. I don't mess around with those anymore, but I still have them all. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll have a son or something that'll really love baseball, and he'll have all these great cards from 30, 40 years ago that Dad had. But other than that, I do collect like these, little rock buttons or whatever. I have quite a few of those. This one's a Slipknot and David Bowie, but that's about it. Not much more beyond that. Let's see. Question number 3. What is the scariest song in your collection? That's pretty easy too, because we actually have to go back to this album. There's a lot of songs I say, freak me out or give me the creeps or that type of thing, but Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath is truly the scariest song in my collection. And I say that because, actually, a number of things. If you know even about the history of the song, they were kind of messing around with some of that, reading dark books, black magic, all that type of stuff or whatever. And I believe it was Ozzy who had the experience where this black figure appeared in his home and all this kind of stuff. And that's what the lyrics are about. It's like, what is this that stands before me, and, all that stuff. And so, not only is the subject matter by itself a scary thing, but, when you listen to the music itself, the three notes that Tony plays over and over, those are called the devil's something. I can't remember what it was, but it's supposed to be, for lack of better terms, the devil's music. I can't remember the proper term for it or whatever. But on top of that, I remember playing this record with an ex-girlfriend one time, just kind of in the background or whatever. And when Ozzy came in and he screams that yelping, like, oh no, and in the second verse he screams, oh God, please help me. I remember she turned and her eyes got this wide. She looked at the record player and she goes, what in the world was that? I mean, you would swear somebody was stabbing Ozzy in the gut when he was singing that, because the fear and everything that came through that scream, it was unbelievable. And the last thing I'll say about it is, in this day and age when a lot of people try to scare you, like with movies and music, I guess too, it's all stuff that's overdone. They try to scare you with the shock factor, more blood, more in your face, more shockingness, louder, faster, all that kind of stuff. Black Sabbath on that record, or that song, took a totally different approach. That song is scary because it's so slow and low key, and Ozzy is almost kind of singing almost below the music. It's kind of like the new Paranormal Activities movies, where the movie doesn't have blood and gore all on your face. It makes you scare yourself because you get inside your own head. That's exactly what that song does. So, I'm sure I'm rambling on way too much about that, but there's just so many different aspects that I appreciate about that song and how incredible it is that I just have to kind of get all that out. But anyway, let's move along. Biggest section in your collection. I do everything by genre. I have a number of different 80s genres, but overall the 80s is my biggest section. I have 11 or 12 of those cubes are all 80s, and you figure 65, 70 records a cube. That's, 700-800 plus records in my 80s section, which is great because that's my favorite decade. Number 5, what would be your dream band? I could not work that out in my head. Too many conflicting things. I overanalyzed it, so I'm going to plead the fifth on the fifth question. Question number 6, how do you transfer vinyls to your MP3s? I don't do that a lot, but when I do, I have a USB turntable that I use. That actually works pretty good because I have a Feist LP that I transferred some songs a while ago. I just got the CD a few days ago, and I was putting that into my iTunes to replace the vinyl, and the vinyl download actually sounded better than the one from the CD. So I ended up just keeping the vinyl one. So it's a pretty good turntable for doing that. But overall, I don't do it that often. Question number 7, what's your favorite band logo? Well, that's pretty easy. It's the same logo I have tattooed on my back, which would be the logo from Godsmack, the sun down there. And actually, this is a picture disc that has a shot of the logo right there, which is really nice. And that's the other side of it, just in case you're curious. So that's my favorite band logo. I also have a big sticker there on the back of my car. And I guess I do have to give a little credit to Alice in Chains for making that be my favorite logo, because not only is the third song on side 2 of this Godsmack, which is where they got their name from, but also you can see where they kind of pulled that logo from as well. So that's my favorite band logo. Question number 8. If you could recommend one album to the community, what would it be? It's also pretty simple, and I've recommended this album before. it'd be Wolfmother's Cosmic Egg. Why? Because I love hard rock, and for me, this was 2009 Hard Rock Album of the Year. I said that in the previous video about a year ago, I believe. But what this album represents for me is, if all of these modern day bands, My Chemical Romance and all, blah 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 on down the line, Nickelback and so forth, I refer to those bands as American Pie bands, which means those are the bands that would put songs on an American Pie soundtrack. You would find it in that kind of movie. If those American Pie bands would go back to the core of classic and hard rock and just grab all of those elements of, classic Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, the old early Priest, all those type of things, this is the kind of stuff they would come up with. And Wolfmother did exactly that. It's a modern day band that went back to the rules and regulations, if you will, of hard rock and classic rock music. And this album is great. I mean, you listen to songs and you'll get a Rolling Stones feel in one song, you'll get a Led Zeppelin feel in another song, and the song 10,000 Feet is just one of the meanest in-your-face songs I've ever heard. I love it to death, so I couldn't recommend that one enough. But anyway, I think I want to stop this one here, and let me go ahead and switch over to part 2, and I'll answer the rest of the questions.